All right, now to a big court victory for Citizen Action Defense Fund that came on Monday, along with undivided podcaster, CADF's client, undivided podcaster, Brandi Kruse. Um, this was a fairly significant case when it comes to public records. Let me give you a little bit of the background and then I'll share some of the conversation with Jackson Maynard with CADF. This was an appeal in a public records lawsuit against the city of Seattle. And then the ruling from the appeals court affirmed basically that government agencies, you can't evade your obligation to provide public records under Washington State's Public Records Act, the PRA. That reinforces the principle basically that transparency is not optional. And in order to, make people believe that they can trust government officials, you need to provide those documents, when reporters or even Joe Public reaches out for a copy of them. In this case, the city of Seattle, it appears, at least according to the court, went out of their way not to provide the documents in a timely fashion. So here is Jackson Maynard with CADF sharing background on the case we spoke this morning.
Brandi was covering as a political reporter the council meeting in which the Seattle City Council was going to take a really controversial vote on whether to criminalize drug offenses, within the city. And there was a lot of opposition, there was a lot of support, kind of back and forth. And one of the primary folks who had indicated he was going to vote in favor of this measure, and then at the last minute changed his votes, was former council member Andrew Lewis. And so she got curious as to what had caused him to change his vote. And, as she put it, her like reporter senses were tingling. And so it was like, all right, I need to check into this. And so she asked for a fairly narrow request. She just asked for any emails he had received on his public computer, public email account, or publicly assigned cell phone, and any text messages he had received. She just wanted to see who was contacting him. And the problem with the city's response is they said, well, the first installment will be available after August, which happened to be after the primary in which the council member was going to be. And then, probably most troubling, the second installment was not going to be available until mid-November, after the general election in which the former council member was going to be.
So CADF won multiple motions at the trial court level originally, and then surprisingly, the Superior Court judge ruled in favor of the city of Seattle in some of the cross motions for summary judgment last year. And so then the Citizen Action Defense Fund, on behalf of Brandi Kruse, went back and appealed after the lower court's ruling, basically saying the city's conduct undermined the letter and the spirit of Washington's transparency laws.
We had argument last November, and I felt like it went really well. The judges were asking good questions, and the city, seemed to be, not able to come up with good responses to some of the questions, but that's never an indication. You always want to get the order, and we got the order yesterday that we won. It was a unanimous opinion from Division One. And basically, they found that the first installment, they said, well, because that came within a matter of weeks, that probably was okay. So we're not going to find there's a violation there. But they did find a violation for the second installment. And they also found, based on the evidence of the city's failure to follow its own policies, that they did not act with reasonable diligence, which was one of our other issues we'd raised. So, big win yesterday, big win for transparency, big win for public records. It comes in the end of Public Records Week and Open Government Week last week. So it was a nice way to celebrate that.
I did also receive just a few minutes before this podcast some comments back from Brandi Kruse, who was the plaintiff in this case. She was very pleased. She said, basically, this is one of many rulings against whether it's the city of Seattle or other defendants in these cases where public records are being withheld or delayed or strongly redacted, as is often the case when we at the Center Square attempt to get public documents from state agencies or officials. So, to be fair, though, Kruse and Jackson Maynard both pointed out that this is not a reflection on the current administration and new Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson. This was the prior administration under Mayor Bruce Harrell. The bottom line is, Jackson Maynard said, when the government tries to withhold information or delay access, it erodes the public trust. So he's hoping that this new administration under Mayor Katie Wilson will kind of look at this case, note the ruling, and abide by the city of Seattle's own policies on providing public records. All right, so that is a wrap on today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. I thank you for watching. Ask you to check out the Center Square's Washington page, thecentersquare.com/Washington for more stories like this. Thanks for watching.